Yeah, 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 yeah. Yo, welcome back to another edition of the Men Who Cry podcast. Like, subscribe, review, tell a friend, 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 tell a friend to tell a friend. If you not do these things, I have to assume that you are out here gambling with your life savings. On today's episode, I am back from a vacation where I had to essentially play uncle for two very small kids. And I got to tell y'all, shout out to all the parents out there, because I played as significantly, rather, an insignificant role in trying to help raise two kids under the age of three, under the age of four, rather, for 3 whole days. And I'm still tired. Like, I am still tired. Shout out to my niece and nephew. They going to be great kids. They going to be great adults in the future. Well, man, when they wear my ass out. I've seen Lady and the Tramp so many damn times. I might be able to recite some scripture to you. Okay, like it was that prominent in my brain. Okay, but shout out to the time in Florida. That will probably be the last time I'll be in Florida since they now canceled vaccines down there, and everyone's gonna walk around with just some boogers in their nose, and you don't know what they gonna have. We gonna really have. Everyone seen the meme? A Bugs Bunny cutting off the part of Florida. We really gonna have to start talking about doing that, okay? But I haven't been around for a bit for a lot of big news. We will get to the Kawhi Leonard story on a different day, just because as this episode goes out, will be a lot of football talk. But that Kawhi Leonard story is crazy, about him getting paid through a shell company. And we will not talk about how that might also be happening with the Knicks and Jalen Brunson. But we'll be talking about things that we didn't get a chance to cover while I was away. Like Micah Parsons. Of course, I go away on vacation. This is the third time this has happened. Some major storyline has happened while I was on vacation during the time where it's supposed to be dead. Micah Parsons was traded from the Green Bay Packers, or sorry, in reverse, from the Dallas Cowboys to the Green Bay Packers. He was traded for Kenny Clark as a defensive tackle. He's a very good player. And 2 first-round picks. Michael Parsons was also given the largest contract for a non-quarterback in NFL history. He got a 4-year, $188 million deal. He was supposed to be getting $47 million per year. My initial thoughts of the trade, I literally was at a bar with my friend looking at a phone, and one of my friends in the group chat just sent a screenshot of him in a Photoshop Green Bay Packers jersey. And that's why I was like, oh, this isn't real. And then, of course, I ran over and saw Schefter already had the information. So confirmed that he is now on the Packers. My initial thought was, I think like most people's thought is, oh, wow, the Cowboys done messed up, right? It's basically in a situation where you're paying your quarterback the most money in the league. You're paying top dollar for a wide receiver. Defense is terrible, and you have your best defensive player there, and you haven't been able to sign him to a deal. And it's funny because you had these 3 other hold-in situations that took place. 2 of the other guys got paid. Terry McLaurin was paid by the Washington Commanders. You had Trey Henderson, who was paid by the Cincinnati Bengals, who don't pay anybody, and he really didn't get paid. He just got a little bit more money this year. But Micah, the guy who very clearly is the best player of the 3, was moved and signed to a larger deal. Now, like I said before, initially I looked at it as stupid move by the Cowboys. Those first-round picks are probably going to be towards the end of the draft. And you're not necessarily going to have a player or get a player of Micah's caliber, right? However, the way I look at it now is, if you look at the history of the Cowboys recently, they don't really miss on their draft picks. Go back and look at a lot of their first-round picks or their picks in general. Jerry Jones, to his credit, has drafted either high-level players or, frankly, Hall of Fame players, whether it's Zach Martin, Dez Bryant, CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott. It doesn't matter where in the draft these guys are. The Cowboys have done one great thing of their evaluation of players. So I feel fully confident in saying that they will draft good players with this deal, and you'll be able to spread the money more around. The issue I have with this is that for the Cowboys, in a sense, is when they did this deal, right? Because when did they know that this was not tenable anymore? Because I have been saying for the longest time, the reason why I didn't actually take this story very seriously is because, like the two previous other holdings that we saw, those guys got paid, right? They held in, they pouted and screamed, and because the NFL is a way more labor versus union type deal where the bosses tend to win a lot versus the union, that he was going to stay. Even if he didn't get paid, I never thought he would actually get traded. But he now is on another team. And while he didn't get the value back that I think that they could have gotten back, this very much is, like most people have kind of coined, is like the Khalil Mack trade, even though I believe Parsons is a little bit younger than when Khalil Mack, when he was traded. But it's the same picks and kind of player situation. However, the Packers paid a lot to get him. This was not a deal where Micah got just a little bit over what TJ Watt got, which the original record was $41 million. He blew him out the water by $6 million per year. Okay. And now it's a guy who, while, I thought his back was messed up mostly because he didn't get his money, seems like his back is really messed up. Now, do I think it's going to be a long-term thing? It's going to be a big problem for him? No. And the Packers are a team that have historically been a great franchise. Like they might have a losing season here or there, but by a large part, the Packers are in the playoffs. They're winning the division, and they're trying to compete for the Super Bowl. And this is a very talented group of guys, and we'll see whether or not my man J Love will actually be able to put this all together and stop hitting the Y button when he meant to hit X, trying to throw the ball to the actual receivers and stop throwing all those picks. And I actually think that this is a deal that's actually fine for the Cowboys moving on, because now they're able to at least spread some of that money to the defense, and to Jerry's credit, can turn those first-round picks into either one first-round pick, whether or not they move up in the draft for someone, or they move back in the draft and get more first-round picks or just more depth overall. But I think the biggest thing about this is you look at the personality that Micah was, and if you're reading a lot of the reports that are coming out of what's happening in Dallas, is people don't necessarily seem to really have liked Micah Parsons, especially Dak Prescott. And this is, I would argue, the issue going forward of just having player podcasts, right? I'm not saying as someone who has a podcast, who's trying to build a podcast, that players shouldn't have more of a voice, right? That they shouldn't be able to speak. But y'all talking about y'all coworkers at the end of the day. There's a difference between a media member or someone who's trying to be a media member or trying to give information and relay it to fans, talking about y'all, and the dude that you have to see every single day in the locker room. We already saw Micah had problems with it when Malik Hooker said something about him on his podcast. Lawrence, the defensive end for the Cowboys, when he was on the team, didn't seem to like it. He also said something about Dak on his podcast not being a top 5 quarterback. While that might be true, that's not something you can say with someone that you work with. And that's going to rub people the wrong way, especially football players who clearly take everything very, very personally and very, very seriously. And the idea that we have these podcasts run by these players, well, again, they have to talk about the players either that they're going against or that are on their own team, is really, really, really a big issue. So, and this kind of also goes back to the idea of what was happening during his time at Penn State, where he might have been playing a little rough around the edges, I would say, in the locker room, playing some kind of funny games that I don't think people like to play in locker rooms. As someone who has played football, has been in locker rooms, there's a lot of things that go down that aren't necessarily the most kosher, I would say. And it seems like that Micah Parsons is a habitual line stepper. Okay. And we will see if those antics continue. He is obviously a great player. He's one of the best defenders in the league. And I think he'll be motivated to try and live up to the contract and live up to the fact that the team that's the biggest brand in definitely the NFL, might be in sports, basically said, we don't want you on this team no more. You think you're a problem. And this will be a very fascinating time because he is now entering a division where you can tell me any one of those teams win the division. You can tell me any one of those teams finishes last. I don't think we were going to have a division that where all 4 teams make the playoffs. But if we are, this would be the team. This would be the division that you would think it would happen in. So crazy trade by the Cowboys. Not as crazy as you think when you sit back and like think about it and look at what happened. And their run defense has improved. Now, do I think the Cowboys are better for this trade in this season? No, I still think they're going to be terrible. But I do think that him not being on the team gets rid of at least this part of the noise for the Cowboys. But they will eventually come up with a new noise. And I would not be surprised if, well, I don't think they're going to win on Thursday night against the Eagles. I definitely think that they are going to cover. Right now, they are a 7.5-point favorite. I'd figure by the time we get to game time, that number comes down to maybe like under a touchdown. So if you want to bet the game, I get now, get the little hook in. But I think the Cowboys will keep this game close because there's very, very, very few divisional rivalries that end up in blowouts. Speaking of a blowout, though, the biggest game I think of college football, there was two big games that took place. College football is back. This is the first official weekend of the season. I know we had the game in Dublin that none of y'all watch because it was in Dublin. But this was the first week that we got everyone back playing. And I only really want to touch on the two games. Alabama, real quick. Kalen DeBoards. I hope you do not have an internet connection. And I hope people do not know where you live. Because in my lifetime, all right, I've never seen Alabama really be bad. I've never actually even really seen Alabama be like average. Like this thing might go off the rails. Okay. And hopefully for you and your family, I hope you got good insurance. And I hope that you are renting and not buying. Either way, we're going to talk about the Ohio State versus Texas game. And then we will be talking about UNC versus TCU. To start with, Arch Manning made his debut in the horseshoe, falling to the defending national champions, the Ohio State Buckeyes, in a score of 14-7. Arch Manning, if you watch the game, was awful. The first play of the game, he has a naked boot, and you could already tell this man was shook. The ball hit the dirt, like it wasn't even close. I think it was a tight end wide open, couldn't hit the guy out there. I think way too much is being given credit to Matt Patricia in terms of his defensive schemes because he was just bad. Like, let's call it what it was. Like, he has to just hit the passes that he had. And while people are going to give Ryan Day some credit for, I guess, not screwing it up, his team only scored 14 points at home. It wasn't like Ohio State ran away and hit with this game. This game was in hand, and if Arch had a decent game, there's at least a good chance that the game is either much closer, if not Texas can actually even win the game. But I think this comes down to the idea of kind of having hype, right? And while Arch has been on campus for 3 seasons, right? This is his first time really being the starter and clearly not being able to beat out a guy named Quinn Ewers. And while there was a lot of hype around Arch, that hype seemed to come a lot more from his last name. And it seems that we have now entered the generation now of the second coming of the great player, right? This is kind of the age that we are now in. All the guys that we either watched when a lot of these media members were in the media or, like myself, were kids, their kids are now playing. Whether it's Shador, the Mannings, the list goes on and on about all the Gen 2s now, if you want to think about them coming in and playing either their father, mother, or in this case, grandfather / uncle's sport, right? And I am not saying that Arch does not have a chance to be a great player. He has a lot of the measurables and things like that. But a lot of this is based upon hype of what he had going before him. And he is a guy that clearly seems that he's going to need time to get things going. And the idea that this guy was the Heisman Trophy favorite, to me, was ridiculous. It's not the fact that he's bad or he doesn't have a good idea, or a good set of skills, but that was his first road game against the national champions. And you thought he was going to go in there and light them up? He didn't have these great games before this, right? He kind of came in with mop-up duty against Georgia, and I think it was Mississippi State that he played against when the games were over. is going to give this guy time. And the one thing is that the hype machine needs to be turned down to level 2 for him. A lot of people want to compare the idea that like other guys came in here and started and got it going quickly, right? But this is not the level of stardom that I think that we have seen before, right? Like, while we have seen young guys come in, like Jameis Winston and Johnny Manziel won the Heisman Trophy as freshmen. Trevor Lawrence came in and went, I believe, 38-2 when he started at Clemson. Caleb Williams came off the bench at Oklahoma and immediately popped, right? The idea of the star quarterback coming in and lighting teams up is not foreign. The idea of doing that against a national champion on the road is. None of those guys were put in those situations. None of them, okay? And so for Arch, I think we just need to turn it down a little bit. Hopefully my man can, stay off his phone for a while and get it going. But that was not good. Not good at all. But the best thing about this new college football season is that this season isn't over. He's going to have a lot more chances to come through and play a lot better. The team that needs to be panicked or worried might be UNC. They got their ass kicked. So speaking of my trip, this is the only time I'll really get into this trip, and I'll talk about the idea of being a parent. So that game was on Monday night. I personally was out having a good time, taking care of these two little ones with their parents and doing everything we needed to do. My buddy and me are watching the game, and it gets to after the first quarter. TCU, I believe, is up at this point like 14-7. He goes to sleep, right? There's a point where TCU has the ball, and they're driving down the field, and they turn the ball over. I forgot it was an interception by the quarterback or a fumble, but they turn the ball over, right? So UNC has the ball going back the other way, right? And it's like, all right, this is a big drive. We're going to see how they do it like this, right? Immediately, there's a pick six. I'm so exhausted that I'm like, I know this game is over. And that's the funny thing about college is because when you could kind of tell that like the talent level isn't the same, you're like, okay, this game is over. I don't really need the rest of it. I didn't expect it to be 48-17 beatdown, but I knew that game was over once that ball was intercepted. And this thing with Belichick is such a mess already that I do not know if this is actually going to be something that will work out. UNC is odd because this is the second old guy that they have tried to do this with. The former Texas coach come in and do this, and it was fine, but it wasn't what it's supposed to be with Belichick. And now Belichick's here, and it's the same dudes. He has Freddie Kitchen as his coordinator. Mike Lombardi is his GM, and I guess trying to convince people that they're the 33rd NFL team. I do not know why you would want to try and be that. Try and just win regular games. And you would think someone would be like, okay, give him a chance. He needs to get more recruiting classes. Not with the NIL and not with the money that Belichick has in the NIL to get players. You can turn around programs way faster now than when you were a couple years ago without this. And the guy who was the king of no distractions, do your job, is all about distractions. That's all his program is. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to talk about your young lady, but your young lady is part of the distraction. And the fact of the matter is that she was on camera. We saw her after that first drive. You thought everything was going to go popping. She thought she was going to get her shine. And according to me, that was the last time I saw that woman, except for little clips on Instagram and on Twitter. That is real bad. Now, their schedule is, I don't know who put this together, that's one of the worst schedules I've seen. Any halfway decent team needs to win 9 games with that schedule. They don't play any of the good teams in ACC except for Clemson, right? And the idea that they're going to maybe go win 6 games, to me seems pretty disappointing. And why would you bring in Belichick to just win 6 games when you won about that last year? But the noise around this will be large if they do not start winning and winning very, very, very soon. And I am very concerned that this seems to be very much a swan song for Belichick. And Why he essentially is doing this, I think, is more or less a FU to the NFL to show that I can still do this. And I do not think that this era of Belichick will be looked upon fondly, right? I guess the biggest question would be, how does this do for his legacy? And I personally think I will still have Belichick as the greatest football coach of all time. However, you can't then go when you have a lot of the great football coaches have both now coached in the NFL and in college. If he does this poorly, and if someone like an Andy Reid keeps winning at the rate that he's winning, or what if Saban gets hired by an NFL team next year and he really starts getting things cranking? How does that look for him? I do think this will, over time, kind of put him in a tough spot of like it ended poorly. A lot of people remember the ends way more than the highs, especially for a coach. And especially the fact that people will keep pounding the drum at the fact that this man hasn't won anything without Brady by his side. And whether or not that's fair, I don't believe that's all the way fair, but that is just a narrative that will continue to be pressed and pushed. And while it looks like he's going to be there for a couple seasons, because after that first game, I don't think anyone's running down this door to hire him, it's going to be tough for him to get the respectability back of his program if they do not start winning very, 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 very quickly. And that is just the plain art and the facts of it. Last thing we're going to do, because again, this will be coming out on Friday, doing a little bit of predictions. I know we did the first half of the talking about the teams for us now, kind of a little late. We'll definitely still be covering the rest of the top 10 butterfly moments of the NFL of the last 25 years. We'll probably just be sprinkling one, since we have real football to talk about or real sports to talk about at the end of every single one of these to make these things smooth a little bit better. So next week we will actually hit number 10 for you guys to finish off that list. But my Super Bowl pick for right now, I have the Baltimore Ravens finally breaking through and getting to the Super Bowl. And while it's tough to see anyone really beating these guys, I am actually going to go on a little bit of a limb just because I think that football is somewhat a little bit more unpredictable than we want to expect it to be. I'm going to go with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think they have a really good team. I think they're going to have a really good chance to get in there. And I think Baker's going to get them to the Super Bowl. And I have Lamar Jackson winning his first ring against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And that will be my official Super Bowl pick for you guys. All right. Thank you guys again for listening to the Men Who Cry podcast. Like, subscribe, review, and tell a friend. We'll be back again next week with more of all the sports and all the talking and all the stuff that we need to get into. All right. Thank you guys again for listening. Peace.